Hi, I'm Barbara O'Brien. I'm an animal trainer and photographer, and I'd like to welcome you to The Empathetic Trainer. Hi, I'm Barbara O'Brien, and welcome to the Empathetic Trainer podcast. Today's guest is Kara Wilhelmsen. She is the owner of Creature Comforts Pet Services, where she offers dog training, behavioral classes, and home visits. Kara believes that patience and compassion are important parts in learning to live with our companion animals. Well, I can't disagree with that. And we're really glad to have you here today. Thanks for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, when I put out I think how we connected was when I first started the podcast, I put out there on Facebook and social media, I was looking for interesting people and that are following that same kind of path that I'm learning more and more about, which is having empathy and compassion and understanding of our
Yep.
animal, our dogs, our cats, our horses principally, but all animals. And I'm pretty sure you
Yeah.
were kind enough to respond. And so
Yeah.
I put you on the list of someone, and now we're catching up. So,
Yeah. No, it was very intriguing to me as well.
okay.
So I love the direction you're
Well,
going.
so we've been looking over your blog and the other things you're doing, and it's really nice to see you're obviously quite a bit younger than me, and that's great. And it's really nice to see a young person so early start out already having this in hand, like already coming from that approach. Because when I was growing up, the way that we treated animals, it wasn't horrible. Obviously, I mean, I didn't grow up hurt, but we were taught a different way. And even back
Yep.
then, it was like they don't even have feelings like that. Quit amorphizing. Quit saying like they have the same feelings as humans.
Yep.
Which, of course, down in our heart, we knew that was ridiculous. But even scientifically now, they've proven that because we're all mammals, which means, or at least
Yep.
mammals that we're working with, and that means we're animals too. So why wouldn't we
Yeah.
experience trauma in a similar way? Why wouldn't we experience happiness? Why wouldn't animals be allowed to have, or we're not amorphizing. They are feeling things.
Right.
And that's kind
Yep.
of a
And their brains are very
right.
similar to
So that's what I want
ours.
to talk to you about a little bit. And so we'll get to that. First, I want to
Yeah.
start out like, how did you become what you're becoming and what you're doing? And then I
Sure.
want to go
Yeah.
into more of the feelings and emotions and the whole empathetic thing that we're trying to do. But how do you get to
Sure.
be you? Because that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it didn't start out with being around a lot of animals as a kid. I actually didn't grow up with my parents having animals, so it must have just been meant to be because I always was obsessed with animals and learning everything I could about them. And it wasn't necessarily just dogs at first. I was interested in horses and cats and everything too, but I just had the opportunity to work at a boarding
Hmm.
place. My mom's friend knew someone, and
We're talking
loved being around.
dog
Yeah,
boarding.
sorry,
Okay. Hmm.
dogs. Yeah. Yep, dog boarding. They did some daycare too, but mostly boarding. And I kind of just got into that a lot, and I ended up becoming like a manager type of person there, a crew leader, they
Hmm.
called it. So that had helped run the facility, and it kept growing. And then they started offering grooming and
Okay.
training. So tried my hand at grooming. Not for me. I give them lots of props. It's very stressful and hard on your body, but I was a little bit too stressed there because I was always caring about the animals. Being really stressed in that environment, I didn't feel I had enough time
Hmm.
to kind of help them, be okay with what was going on and everything. So got into the training. I kind of assisted with some training there for a while in that same sort of facility and fell in love with it. I will say, kind of like you mentioned, back then, I'm trying to think of how many years ago this was now, probably 20-ish years ago. They were doing things that I didn't feel right about in my
Hmm.
gut. There were like, prong collars and lots of things. One of the things that I'm passionate about is words. Words matter.
Hmm.
I have an English degree actually from Winona State University, so I enjoy writing and stuff, but it was very clear to me right away that I didn't gel with everything. And luckily, I've always been a person who questions what's going on and why things are the way they
Hmm.
are, and I don't just follow because it's the status quo. So I knew that I wanted to do stuff a little bit differently. I didn't want to necessarily even call it obedience
Yeah.
because that means, it's like militant, you have to obey. I want to call them cues, not
Oh,
commands. We're cueing
yeah.
you. It's okay if you don't figure it out, those types of things. So I picked up on a lot of, I guess, what I wouldn't do the same there. And so I got interested in finding where else I could learn information from. So while I was in
Mhm.
college for English, I went to, it's called Animal Behavior
Oh,
College.
cool.
And yeah, it's an online, well, mostly online. It's about, I don't know, maybe 3/4 ish online learning. And funnily enough, I already feel like I knew everything just instinctively, but the best part was actually the in-person mentor program.
Ah,
So yeah, it was great. I got hooked up with I think the biggest, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, places in Rochester, Possibilities Dog Training.
and
The
Rochester,
owner,
Minnesota. Yeah. Okay.
yes,
Just
thank
for
you. That's a
context.
New York one, I know. Yeah, yeah. Um, and the owner was my mentor. So she had already gone through a lot of stuff. So she gave me so much good advice. And then right after my mentorship, she hired me
Mhm.
on. So I started assisting with a bunch of classes there, and I did gel with 99.9% of the stuff that they were espousing and explaining to people and how they went about things. So it felt more of a fit. And I just was also loving being around trainers. So other people that had the same ideas and
Mhm.
passion as I
Mhm.
did. But I was one of the few that was like, I want to do this full time somehow someday,
Yeah, and that's
instead of
not
it
an
just
easy thing
being,
to do. It's not.
no, most of them are doing it kind of like an evening. I'll do classes here and there in addition to their full-time
Mhm.
job. So it wasn't even 2015, 10 years ago. It's kind of a new, um, like full-time position or whatever you want to call it, career, I guess, that is coming up where you can be a full-time behavior
Mhm.
trainer. So back then it was just classes,
Right.
classes, classes, classes. That's all that people knew. If my dog has issues, go to a class. That'll solve everything, which it doesn't. So knowing all the stuff we know now with science is when I started reading the books my mentor told me to read and going to conferences. I loved hearing about all the behavior
Mhm.
scientific background stuff now that we know much more about, as you said, than we have ever. And I felt like I wanted to do more than just classes. So that's when I started getting into learning about specific behaviors like reactivity, fear, aggression, whatever, those things. But it also helped that at the time I had a border collie mix who had a lot of her own behavior stuff going on that I didn't really just instinctively know what to do
Mhm.
about it. I cared, but I didn't know how to help her.
Well,
So that was
let's
also
talk
another,
about her, and the
yeah,
issues you faced at the time, and then, like, how did you learn to
yeah,
help, her regulate or whatever it is that she needed to do? I have,
yeah.
2 border collies and a border collie or a collie cross, so I do get
Oh, nice.
I'm a little biased.
The
I love the
herding.
herding dogs, you know, and so,
Yes. There are a lot of dogs,
yeah,
but
and
yeah,
luckily I live on a farm, so this is the best border collie life,
right.
one could have because
Yep.
there's I mean, so much run, play, do their job, there's sheep, there
Yeah.
so mine don't have I've been lucky, you know what I mean? They have their but when you don't have
Yeah.
an environment that's perfect for a border collie, you know, sometimes
Yeah.
things can happen. And
Well,
then also there's a lot of variation in border
yeah.
collies, the drive, things like that. So please tell me about your border collie.
Her name was Tayla, and she was my second dog. My first one was a pug, so he was just chill, bred to be a lap dog. He was very sweet, but all the dogs I've owned so far have had bad past
Mm,
situations, though, and hers was as a very, very young puppy, she had been
mm,
attacked by a
sure.
dog in the first household she was in. So then she, friend of a friend type of situation, fell into my
Yeah.
household at the time. And I was still in college, towards the end of college, but so yeah, I was in a rented house, but it's still was like I had to go to school and stuff. So I did what I thought you should do with a puppy because I never technically owned, especially a very smart puppy that wanted to do things all the time. So she was one of those like, chew on cords, tear up
Mhm.
things, like, oh, she got my shoes. Like I had to learn the hard way with a lot of things because the pug was not the same
Yeah.
as the border collie. They're very, very different. But I learned pretty quickly she was smart. But part of being so intelligent is a lot of these intelligent dogs too easily almost make connections, associations with things. So, like for self preservation, they're being hyper. aware of everything, hyper vigilant. And she went, okay, dogs are bad because I was attacked by a dog. We went outside on walks, and then she went, oh, there are people with
Ah.
dogs. So now people are bad because they're associated with that. They're
Oh, wow,
connected.
okay,
And
yeah.
yeah, and then it was, oh, movement because border collie herding breed. Movement got her very, of
Mhm.
course, um, going there. So it became just basically anything. So people on bikes, rollerblades. It became cars then because they had wheels and they would move by fast. So basically, I felt like I couldn't have her outside of the
You must
house,
have been
which
overwhelmed. I mean, that's a lot for
I was
anyone, you know?
very, yeah, especially at that age where I didn't have at that point the trainer,
Mhm.
support group, I guess, basically that I have now where I can kind of bounce
Well,
things off
the
of
average
them.
person in
Um,
that case would be like, "This dog's too much," and they would
oh yeah, yeah,
like, "That's it," and they'd rehome her or whatever it is.
yeah.
Um,
But
I
but of course, being me, I was like, I don't want to give up. I just don't know what
No,
to
boy,
do.
lucky dog, you know? But, let me
Yeah,
but you did
yeah,
say something about how they make it a quick association, or what did you said something like that, right? No, they let me,
yes,
when you said that, it reminds me of something. With an
yeah,
animal actor trainer, we audition, dogs to be animal actors, so people will bring their dogs to
yeah.
set, and I've got strobes set up, and, we'll take
Oh,
a
yep,
photo, right?
yep.
And, 95% of the dogs aren't really bothered by the strobes. Now we take our time introducing the strobe. We don't just throw them out there. We gradually get them closer. We
Yeah.
make sure they're not being bothered. But the border collies, some Aussies, they go like the sky is freaking exploding. They like
Yes.
they are so quick to
Yeah.
go. This is not real life. Something's wrong.
Yeah, it's not
But it's
good.
funny that you say because the vast majority of the dogs that are bothered by the strobes are going to be really highly intelligent, you know,
Yep.
paying attention because they're
Yep.
like really watching their environment. Not to say other breeds, it happens in other breeds too, but more
Yeah.
often than not,
We bred them to be
more
like
often than
that.
not, it's going to be a border collie who says, "Nope, the sky's exploding. Mom, we got to get out of here."
Yeah,
And then
something's not
we
right.
don't
Yeah,
make them
I
do
mean,
it. I mean, we just go, "Okay, we get it. No
sure,
problem,"
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's not like we have to have them do
Yeah.
it. I will not stress a dog out with
Right.
fear. That's not
No.
so, but
And I love
no, we
that.
just well, it's not worth it. Why would you do that? But,
No,
so
it's not.
I understand what you're saying when you say, "Okay, then it grew into this, and then it grew into that," you know? So go on.
Yeah,
You were, like, overwhelmed, so then what happened?
so yeah, so once I kind of coinciding with getting that mentor, I would bounce things off of her, and then at like every book I read, every conference I went to, I learned more that made me understand her better, as in, okay, this is more of a deep-seated thing. There's nothing that I can do that's just going to be like a band-aid,
Mhm.
because that's not going to actually help long term, which is what a lot of old school kind of traditional training was. Let's just make the surface thing stop.
And
So
what would
barking,
be what would be their answer to that? Like, I was told when I had a German Shepherd, who I, got when she was 6, 7 months old, so I didn't start her as a puppy, would worry,
yeah,
and they said, "Well, have her sit." Like, have her sit and think about, and give her a treat. It was like,
yes,
but we're not solving the
yes,
dog turned out to be fine, but
no.
it wasn't solving the underlying, you know
I was just talking about this the other day. Like, sit was the answer to everything back then. It was just have your dog sit, and then they can't do anything bad. If they're sitting and staying, that solves everything.
until it
Or laying
doesn't,
down
right?
sometimes too.
Until
But
it doesn't.
right, no, but it really just doesn't. It's just kind of trying to control a situation that they didn't know enough
Did it bring
about.
up the
And
dog's
that's
anxiety by
why,
being told to sit and stay? Does their anxiety go up?
of course, it definitely does, because you're taking away options, right? You're saying, okay, you can't show your full body language, which is how they communicate. They can't do the flight part of
Mhm.
fight or flight. Like, there's just, you're not listening
Yeah, it's the
basically to
same thing
them.
with
So then you're
horses.
going,
Same
okay,
thing with horses or cats,
yeah,
you know?
like I don't trust this person because they're not listening to
Yeah.
me and actually helping me. They're just trying to control
Yeah.
me and have me do one very specific thing, but it doesn't help the underlying thing. It's kind of like, you know, putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. Like, that's not that's not going to do much. It's not going to help long term. Like, it's, you got to get to the root of it
Okay.
all, because if you help them feel better, they're going to act different, which is what you're looking to solve, is the
Right.
actions. But it's the emotion behind why they're acting the way they're acting. If they're afraid of something, they're probably going to bark at it to get it to go
Mhm.
away. And a lot of what we think of as aggression is, a lot of it's just they're afraid of something. They're unsure what's going to happen. They don't trust it. They don't like it. They want it to go away, so they act tough and barky loud, and they kind of, they do all those things that look scary to
Right.
us, but it's supposed to be because they're trying to get the thing to go away. They're trying to tell the dog to not come near them. They're trying to tell the person they don't trust, whatever it is. They're outwardly showing those things. But as people, like, we don't like that. We don't like growls. We're not supposed to, though, instinctively, because that's survival instinct. If a wolf growls at you or a bear, like, you're not supposed to think that's a great thing. It's just you don't want to just have them not vocalize what they're feeling because that doesn't solve the feeling. So don't worry so much about the vocalization, but let's think of why they feel the need to vocalize like that. What are they feeling that we can help? Because if they feel better about the
Mhm.
situation or their triggers, they're not going to do those
Right.
things,
So
but it's also good
then
information.
how? Because the horses are the same way. I keep going back to that, but like a horse is pawing, right?
Yeah,
And then the old school thing would
yeah,
be like, get after him for pawing. Like, okay,
yep,
first of all,
yep,
why is he pawing? And then if we get to the where he can regulate and not feel the need to paw, it's like the more work you're
yes,
doing to make him feel better, what you just said, then those
yep,
problems take care of themselves instead of getting after a particular action. So
yes,
what happened then?
exactly.
So you have her and you see the problems, then what happened?
Yep. So I learned about like behavior modification because there was a couple things at the place I was working, Possibilities, where they would help people with those. So I learned a couple key things. One, just to help her learn the skill of relaxation because she didn't know. They don't, I mean, just like us, they're not born just knowing how to relax in all different situations. So I actively worked on her learning the skill of relaxation, which sounds weird because it's kind of the act of doing nothing
Well, it's with
almost, or at least being
self-regulation,
okay.
right? I mean, in a sense,
Yeah,
self-regulation.
yeah,
It's like when we teach children,
yeah,
we say to
basically.
children, "It's okay, take a deep breath."
Yes, so you're also this is the key part that I had to learn that helped a
Mhm.
lot was I needed to calm down too. So if I saw her triggers, I started
Oh, yeah,
getting,
yeah.
triggered. And so she would go, "Oh, mom's worried about something. Where is the thing?" And it just made it worse. So I had to do I tell people all the time, I'm like, you can inwardly be freaking out. That's normal, but outwardly just take some deep breaths and be calm and calmly talk to them. And that's going to help them feel more secure because they're watching us
Right.
and they're looking at our body language.
Does it help the owner too? Because you can't fool a horse,
Yeah, it does
and you can't
eventually.
fool a dog.
Yeah.
A a
Well,
dog knows what you're feeling, whether you pretending or not.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yep. So I say it kind of starts with it's kind of like the fake it till you make it
Okay, yeah,
thing,
that
but
makes sense.
yeah, but it's also telling them and having them understand what to do, which is my next part. Um, helps them feel more confident in the situation because then they know how to react to their dog doing these things or how to be proactive about having them have that behavior modification happen so that they feel
Okay, so
better. So having that plan.
what do they do? That's a great
So
thing, but
yeah, so after the relaxation, because you can do that at home and kind of start that going, the other part is the behavior modification, where it's basically like classical conditioning to an extent here. So, watch the world is the phrase of I forget who coined that, but it's basically going, okay, you're going to go to a space where the triggers
mhm.
are, but you're going to have distance enough from the triggers that your dog is still it's called at or under
Oh,
threshold
yeah, yeah,
because
no,
we all know what over
yeah,
threshold.
I understand what
Yeah,
you're saying.
over threshold's the
Mhm.
crazy. At or under threshold, because they can't learn if they're over
No, because
threshold,
the
right?
brain is
So
the
at
executive thinking is
too
completely
stressed,
shut off. Yeah.
it's gone. Yep. So they just care about the trigger at that point. They're just kind of seeing one thing, worrying about one thing. But when they're at or under threshold, they still will take food, which food is going to help with multiple things. One, it does help them kind of turn off almost the kind of fight or flight type of brain,
Mhm.
where if you're eating, the body goes, oh, we're in rest and digest. So
Okay.
to a certain extent, the body calms down because you also have to chew and swallow and breathe
Mhm.
and all that stuff kind of happens. But it helps the brain that way. There's dopamine, just like with us, eating makes
Oh,
us
yeah,
feel
yeah,
good
yeah.
briefly. So stress eating, all that stuff. But so food helps with that, but also the watch the world is specifically you connecting the food, the feel good, that stuff with their trigger. So, for example, if I'm sitting at a lake, we have in Winona, there's a lake, and dogs are walking around it. I can sit back in the field, and when a dog, let's just say it's dogs that my dog is barking at or
Mhm.
reactive to, the dog starts showing up, and I start treating my dog just for knowing the dog's there in the
Okay.
distance. And the second that dog goes out of sight, I stop feeding.
Okay.
So it's every time one comes, you get that
Sure.
connection going. So it's not just sight necessarily, I tell people too. It's like if they know it's there, because you know, like dog can be looking at something and look away and be looking at you, but they know that's still going on. Their ear might still be kind of twitched back
Mhm.
there, or they might be kind of glancing because they're keeping an eye on it. But it's just knowing the trigger is present, getting that very distinct connection of you get this stuff to make you feel better, and connect that with the trigger, which also does double duty of having them go, oh, I'll look to you in case you have something good when
Mhm.
I see the trigger coming. So I'm not forcing them, by the way, to look away, because that is a thing that used to happen a lot where they're like, just have them look at you and sit and ignore the trigger. But that also just isn't a natural thing, right? Like if you're worried about something, you're going to want to look at
Right.
it. And I'm okay with my dog looking at things. That's
Mhm.
normal.
Mhm.
I look at stuff when they walk, something walks by or a squirrel shoots
Yeah,
out up a
yeah.
tree on our walk. I'm going to look at it. But it's how they feel, again, that matters. So I don't care if they're looking at it or not. Now I still worry about like if they start to, inch up the threshold a little bit, so they start to get too starey or get too
Mhm.
tense, and I can tell it's too hard. If it gets too hard, then that just means you need to create more distance. So distance is the variable that we work with Watch the World. So the farther away, the easier they're going to have a time learning and feeling, learning
But
basically, yes, feeling
it's a
okay
process,
taking
right? It's
food.
not overnight. This is gonna take time. I mean,
No.
it takes time
Yep.
to reset, build safety,
It's like habit
Mhm.
making, breaking. Yeah, it's definitely, you basically are building up a neurological pathway. You're trying to have them go down this pathway when they
Mhm.
see their triggers instead of this old
Okay.
one that they've been doing, which is feeling a
Are you
specific way.
finding people more open to wanting to take the time to do this versus, "I'm just gonna get rid of the dog." You know what I mean? Like, 'cause it feels to me like back in the day,
Oh,
it was
right.
just,
Yeah.
and there's still, of course, a lot of poor dogs that are dumped and, I mean, they just never get a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But is there a trend to people wanting to be better owners? Did you see that?
I do think so. I think that unfortunately sometimes it stems from trying everything else first. So then or people like myself that do behavior this kind of way with the science-based knowledge, kind of are their last resort, because they've fallen for these quick
Mhm.
fix guarantees of people who aren't actually certified trainers, that are trying to just do the band-aid thing or use something to basically control the dog or make them afraid of even reacting. So a lot of times they've come from that. So then I actually have to do a little bit of,
Backtracking, yeah.
rebuilding and shaping and having the dog trust them again and all that stuff. But I will say more and more, it does seem like people are actively looking for the kind of situation that I offer, which is going at it scientifically, empathetically, like making sure that they're comfortable with what I'm doing to their
Mhm.
dog and that they understand what's going on, because I teach them
Yeah,
too.
you'd have
I make sure they
yeah,
understand
yeah.
everything, right? Like how to read their dog, because everyone should know that, but they don't necessarily. How to read their dog, how what thresholds are, and how to work on the watch the world and all that stuff. And I write them a very, very, very detailed email because writer,
Mhm.
and I give them lots and lots of information, and I give them resources because people just Google stuff now, and it's you're never going to know what you're going to find. You're going to find the opposites,
Mhm.
and person, A, that doesn't know anything, they don't know which one to go with. They're just going to be
Well,
guessing
we find
basically
that with the dogs that
because,
come in, because we're gonna see a wide variety of owners that wanna, get their dog into showbiz, right? And, we see
yeah,
some dogs that are handled exactly like you're talking about, and and it's a joy, right? I mean, these dogs are gonna be
yeah,
fine, and we see other dogs, and it might even be a young dog, and it doesn't need a prong collar. There's just and I'm like, "Hey, your dog is really sweet. I just don't," you know, "Well, why?"
yep,
And they go, "That's what they told us." It was like whatever school they're going to, it's like that's the
yep,
default and that's the behavior we're going to do. And if they're open and you can say, maybe you try this approach instead, we just had
yep,
that happen recently, and then so she switched
yeah,
schools. And her dog, I'm so grateful, is so much happier for it. Is going to be
yeah.
fine, but it was a,
I love
yeah,
that.
but
Yeah,
they need to be open to
it's
that,
a whole
so.
yeah, yeah, it's a whole nother way of thinking about things. So I definitely feel like I do a lot of like human psychology when I go to
Mhm,
these one-on-ones at people's houses, because I have to read the person
mhm.
too and figure out where they are as far as what they think of even just dogs. Like, are they property? Should they just do everything that you say and not all these types of things to see where they are. And then I start laying a foundation of, well, here's what we know now because of
Mhm.
science. Because usually if you say that,
Yeah, the
a
credibility.
lot of
Yeah.
people kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, science. And the kind of questioners or naysayers, I can usually pick those out right away. And I also give them, some knowledge of what to look for in a trainer, because even if they don't connect personally with me, I want them to understand what to look for as far as like, are they credible,
Mhm.
right? Do they have good, knowledge? Do they continue their education? Because if they're doing the same thing they've done 20 years ago, we know better now. So anyone can call themselves a trainer. Unfortunately, they're working on it, but there isn't, it's an
Yeah, it's
unregulated
the same
field
thing in the
right
horse world.
now,
Yeah, for sure.
which it scares me because it scares a lot of us trainers because any Joe Schmo can tell you to just, shock your dog anytime they do something bad
Yeah,
or
we had
whatever.
that happen
Um,
too. A gal came in with a nice enough dog or whatever, and she had a shock collar on it, and the dog wanted to say hello to us because it was excited, and she
yeah,
was shocking
yeah,
it for wanting to be friendly, and I'm like, "Stop, stop, 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 stop right now.
yeah.
Do you have, we have a different collar here. We're gonna take this off." You know, um, I said, "We
Because what is she teaching that
like not
dog?
to be
That
nice, because
people,
I just couldn't see any issues in that. I get really up. I don't know. I want to go there. I just get so upset about
oh,
that. So I hear you.
totally, I
But I also told her,
understand.
I said, we
Yeah,
can't, I
yeah,
told her we can't use your dog. If this is
yeah,
your methods, we can't work with you
yeah.
know? Um,
No,
and so I don't
no.
know where she went with that, but it was
Yeah, it
like,
is
what
hard.
are you thinking? Why are I don't, I think they get told something. They honestly, I don't think they're
They do.
purposely trying to, I don't think they understand, you
No,
know?
that's the thing. I think you're right. I think a lot of it's naivete. Like they just don't know what they don't know. And they will just listen to someone because if you make it sound good, you can make anything
Mhm.
sound good. Like I have had dogs my whole life and I've trained them all with this shock collar and they're all perfect. So if you do this, I promise your dog will be your idea of perfect. And they say that and someone goes, okay, why would they not buy in and trust that, especially with all usually they give kind of the kind of key phrases or words of like, I guarantee, like they'll be like, it's a little bit kind of too good to be
Mhm.
true, and then it is type of situation. But yeah, people just want quick help.
Okay.
And when they are told that if they do something, it'll help in an
Mhm.
instant, they kind of latch on to that without knowing there's an alternative necessarily. And unfortunately, using fear, which usually punishment, it's kind of all based in
Yeah.
fear, right? Or
Yeah.
intimidation. Using that, unfortunately, it does work, right? So, like, technically, what they're looking for to happen tends to happen. The dog feels something negative, so then they stop, they try and not do whatever they need to do
Mhm.
to not get that negative feeling. So, fear and intimidation work. I mean, look at there's like our military, like there's definitely fear and intimidation have been used by people forever. Even in classrooms back in the day, like fear and intimidation, they work
Mhm.
to get very obedient results and black and white, but they don't take into account
No.
feelings,
No.
emotions, and how dogs learn, how any kind of relationship with your dog is usually broken when you start to do that. And that's one of the things I say to people is I do want your dog to like trust you and like
Yeah.
you and not be afraid of you. Like, don't you want your dog to like you? And then you can kind of see them going, oh, yeah, I guess it wouldn't feel good if I got zapped every time. Like, they have to really kind of get into the mind of the dog and again, be
Mhm.
empathetic and understand that that's not actually going to help long term. So it only works short term. And when I say works, it just looks like it's
Yeah.
helping because the dog might shut down
Yeah.
because they don't want to feel that, right? So it's like an outside again thing versus working on the inside. So if I see a trainer that just says, I do this for every single dog, I always use punishment for every single dog, I always do shock eyes, whatever, they're just not knowing enough about each individual dog, first of all, because it's not just a black and white
Mhm.
world, not one size fits all. And then also they're just feeding on the basic, you know, idea of fear can work and intimidation can work to get someone or something to do what I want them to
Right.
do. But it doesn't have anything to do with how dogs can learn without having to
Well, yeah,
use
if you're trying to learn
fear and
something and somebody
intimidation and
hits you every
punishment.
time you make a mistake, I mean, how are you going to learn? You're not going to learn your times tables that way. 4 times 4, whack. You're
No.
going to be like, oh, yeah, you're not going to learn. And of course,
Yeah.
animals, same
Scared.
way. So then what happened with
Yep.
I'm sorry, the sweet dog's name, the border collie, Tayla.
Tayla.
So
Tayla.
you got Tayla.
Yep.
you understood. So then how did Taylor herself get helped? What were you able to do for her?
Um, I did just that. I worked on relaxation. There's something called the relaxation protocol that Dr. Karen Overall created that I worked on, where she was on a mat and I held her learn that I could walk around her, noises can happen, things can happen, kind of like the herding breed thing where I wanted her to be used to things happening
Mhm.
around her and not worrying about it. So I did that. She would get calm treats for things happening around her, and she just practiced that in our house. And then outside of the house, I did the watch the
Mhm.
world. So I would go to places where I knew that there would be dogs and
Yeah.
people, of
Yeah.
course, too. But I would go at times specifically when it wasn't super busy because that would have just been setting us up to
Mhm.
fail. So less going on, but I could have a clear sight line of them coming and going. So it wasn't just constant,
Right. Right.
you
So
know,
there's yeah.
triggers. Yeah. So there's little gaps in between. And I would only do it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and then we'd go home and take a break and rest. And I do think that I don't know why I did that specifically because I wasn't necessarily told that, but I have learned since then it's a very key thing is to not just overdo it with our dogs, not to just go, 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 drill, drill, drill until they have to tell us they're
Mhm.
done by kind of having a meltdown
Oh
or
yeah, no,
getting
I understand that
frustrated.
completely because we work on set. We train animal
Yeah.
actors, right?
Yeah.
And that's it.
They
There's
need,
stresses. So just being in the
yeah.
studio, stress. Okay, now you're on a bunch of new
Yes.
people, stress, and now you're on set, stress.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, because I've worked with these dogs, I've met them. I know which dogs absolutely love it. Like this is like a
Yeah.
cheese treat day, and like they get excited just
Yeah.
driving. And so because we don't use dogs that don't love it because A, it's not right, and then B, they don't look good on they don't look it's not they don't look good, they're
Right.
looking
You can
happy. Same
tell.
thing with a cat, I mean,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
cats like to do the studio work because you're not gonna make a cat do anything. I mean, there's no obedience in a
No.
cat. So, they have
Yeah.
and same thing with those other animals I work with. So, I will tell I'm on set and I'll just go, "Dog's done," or, "We need a break," and then,
Yeah.
like, because
Yep.
if the photographer who 99% of the time, of course, they're good and they know what, they're doing it. But if they miss it in the time frame, because they're not ready, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, dog is done because I want him to come back
Yep.
next time and be just as happy.
And want to, yeah, exactly. You don't want to kind of taint
Right.
it
No,
or
no. And
poison
so
it for
we do
them.
it. I'm watching him
Yeah.
before he starts telling me he's done. I'm watching him
Yes.
beforehand because, you might have a
Yep.
5-minute window to get your shot, but, sorry, dude, you weren't
Yeah.
ready. That's on you. Um, I mean, we're
Yep.
really
Yep.
lucky because the people we work with are so intuitive and so great. But I've also feel like I've trained them
Good. Yeah.
too. Like I've trained
Yeah.
the people
Seriously.
to understand the limitations of that it's a dog.
Yes. Yep.
My favorite thing to do is they'll give you a complex set. We want him to walk onto set, pick up the toy, shake it, turn around, lay down, and then look at camera. And I always look
Whew.
at him and I go, I'll tell him because like, yeah, like it's a human. He's going to, one thing at a time,
Yeah.
one
Yep.
action,
You have to break it all
then
down.
yeah, but it's
Yep.
just so funny because I always have to go, I'll tell him and we'll see what happens because,
Yeah, I always joke that they don't know our language. Aren't verbal species like us where they are like they know English and all this stuff. Like 99% of what they do is body
Mhm,
language. And so if you're not listening, it means you're not looking for it. Like you gotta actually try with them. Like they just are, we're kind of their world. Like they really quickly learn
mhm,
us. They learn what we look like, what we sound like, what we do when certain things happen. They can learn to read our faces so well. There's some cool studies there where they can, especially their people with facial expressions and everything like that. But yeah, they're brilliant at that stuff because it's kind of we're their world in a certain way, right? Like a lot of stuff revolves around
mhm.
us. But yeah, it's amazing how many people don't even know some basic body language, like, communication that dogs are trying to say something. Like I will look at a dog and go, okay, your dog is really unhappy right now. And someone will have no
Right.
clue. And it's not that they don't care, it's that they just don't
Or they'll go
know.
like, "I don't
And
know
so
I don't
that's,
know what happened. He just all of a sudden bit that person."
yeah, there's basically no such thing. Usually there's several warning signs that they just aren't aware of before something happens. So I have to kind of get to the nitty gritty of the timeline of
Yeah.
things and hey, do you remember what their body looked like when you did this
Yeah,
or
there was a
whatever?
famous horse trainer who said, "What
Yeah,
happened before what happened?"
yep,
Mm.
totally. It didn't just come out of the blue. Something usually triggers something. And sometimes it's just a troubleshooting problem solving game where I'm like, okay, is it because this dog, physically doesn't feel well and the kid, pushed whatever it physically could be, that could be part of it too. It doesn't have to just be
Mhm.
mental. It can be the dog's getting older and has
Mhm.
arthritis, and so it doesn't want to do something. There, I had a trainer friend whose dog wasn't grabbing things anymore and holding them in their mouth, and she ended up learning that the dog had a fractured
Oh,
tooth.
yeah, I've heard. It would make
Uh,
sense, yeah.
right, but like you wouldn't know otherwise because the dog was still eating. But yeah, there, it was just one of those things where if something is different, there's some reason. We got to just get to the bottom of the reason. And yeah, they're always talking. That's what I tell people. I'm like, they're constantly saying things. You just got to learn how to read
Yeah,
it.
but do you find that, that energy plays a big part in this? Like, our energy, around them?
Yes, it really does. There are definitely people where I can tell that they're just so frustrated with their dog that it's hard because you can see the dog and them both kind of at odds just in the room right away. I can tell that there's not a good relationship. Because if you are constantly stressed, just like if a dog's constantly stressed, and you have all these stacking stressors and not enough time to regulate, you're on a hairpin trigger. Like you're not going to be able to handle things that you maybe even could have handled before. Like I'll see someone get really frustrated about some teeny little thing, and I'm like, okay, there's something else going on. You've had a hard time for a while now, and you need some help learning that some things are natural and that we can do a couple things that'll help you guys and to rebuild that trust back up because it is a relationship. It's not just a one way,
Mhm.
thing. And having people learn that they're also not most of the time, of course, I'll say, you're not doing anything wrong. You just don't know what to do. And that's why I'm here and it's okay.
Mhm.
We're going to have you learn these things. And even just getting someone who's understanding like that does tend to help the people almost immediately. I will have people that will sometimes cry or hug me and be like, I feel so much
Right.
better. It's not me. I'm not ruining my dog,
Mhm.
and all that stuff. And they're like, I just want to have a good relationship with my dog. And I'm like, I know everyone wants to have a harmonious household. Like
Right.
that should be a normal thing. But yeah, it's definitely just there's a lot of just not enough knowledge on dogs in general. And that's why education for me is such a big thing. And I'm kind of more and more in my career, I'm kind of zooming
Mhm.
out and wanting to figure out places that I can, give that knowledge and have education in just basic dog stuff like body language, communication, how to interact with a strange dog, all these kids and dogs. I mean, there's a lot of things that if just more people knew, it would really, really help. And if we had people understand to get that information from
Right.
behavior, certified trainers, behaviorists, not just their neighbor, their
Mhm.
friend, their groomer, their
Mhm.
breeder, their vet. Which that being said, vets are great to ask for a lot of advice, but they're not technically just behaviorists. And I worked at several vets,
Mhm.
by the way. I
Yeah,
love
of
I
course, yeah.
love doing
Yeah.
that. It's a very stressful environment as
Mhm.
well, very draining emotionally. But they are like, yeah, we don't really get you. You have to basically specialize in it. And I was like, I know, which is why you guys probably feel bad when you get asked for advice and you just kind of have to guess on the spot to try and help them if you don't have a trainer, But having worked at two vets, they both now recommend people to me because they're like, oh, at least I can give them somebody who knows what they're
Right,
doing,
right. Yeah.
who is a behaviorist. But I get why people kind of naturally gravitate towards asking maybe the vet if they think of, someone who might
Mhm.
know, the science behind behavior or something like that. But it definitely is one of those things where the more we get, vets to work with trainers or even breeders to recommend a trainer instead of just giving behavior advice. Sorry, my clock. I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear
No,
that,
that's okay.
but it plays a song every hour. Okay. But yeah, it's definitely something that collaboration is helpful and not just, the ego needs to go away too. There's definitely some of that where, if you work with dogs, that doesn't mean you know everything about dogs. I'm not, even though I groomed for like 6 months, I'm not going to give grooming advice.
Mhm.
I'm going to send someone to the groomer. I'm not going to, just pretend I know things or just try and help because, you don't know what else to do. I want everyone to kind of collaborate in a
Mhm.
way, or at least know where to go. At least just go, here's a great resource. Here's someone who, and again, to do that, they need to know what to even look
Well,
for,
right, 'cause
not
I
to
don't know if you
just,
remember a few years ago, there was a very popular television show with a fellow that was using
mm,
methods that we just kinda find abhorrent, you know? But you'd have to know
yes,
that
yes,
'cause it was very
you know,
popular, you know?
oh yeah,
And,
it's the
yeah, and
charm. It's like it makes it sound good,
yeah,
so
and
they want to
I
believe
don't
it.
know how much, yeah, just you know what I'm talking about, and
I know exactly what you're
yeah.
talking about. It gets me very upset
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Um,
it's a
well, I'm
lot.
really glad that the world has changed in the sense that there's so much information out there. But like you said, it's a matter of
Yeah,
finding the right information. And we've been really lucky on
yeah,
the podcast to have people who are advocating. advocating for better treatment and understanding of animals. That's pretty
Yeah.
much our focus. And so
Yes.
you've been
Yeah.
fantastic because you're totally exactly expressing what I believe, and I want more people to hear. So let's talk about that, because you
Yeah.
mentioned that's what your future goals are. Because first of all, let's talk about what you're doing
Yeah.
right now, so that
Sure.
we'll be adding all of your links and information, to the show notes so that people can reach you. But
Sure.
what you're doing right now. But I was also interested in what you had mentioned for your future, which sounds pretty exciting and helpful for all the dogs out there. I mean, it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely currently I've gotten to the point instead of focusing on kind of dog care or any of that stuff, I am, like I said, really honed in on the training, but I think of it as just
Hmm.
behavior and training because they kind of are a little bit different things. And I tell people when I say behavior, that's more of an all-encompassing thing, whereas training, that's just teaching dogs skills usually, right? Like it's kind of, but I want to focus more on the behavior stuff because I want to help people as much as I possibly can. But doing it with just one person at a time, while that is fulfilling, I don't feel like I'm doing
Okay.
enough for what I can. Like my knowledge that I have, I want to just be able to give to as many
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
as I possibly can. So that's why I'm looking at the industries within it, right? People that touch dogs, so vets, groomers, and all that stuff. But also recently, shelters and
Hmm.
rescues. I just spoke at one of them, like an internal. They had all their dog people,
Uh-huh.
volunteers come, and I spoke about dog body language, and I left that feeling like I did so much good because there's like 30 people that asked a bunch of great
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
And I knew that them handling dogs all the time, especially
And
new
stressed.
dogs
The dogs
coming
are
in
stressed. Yeah.
constantly. Exactly. And so it just felt like I touched more, lives that will then touch dogs'
Sure.
lives. And that really ignited a flame in me. And I kind of had a feeling from the beginning, like, I kind of just want to speak, lecture, help the people understand the dogs. I will still always love working with dogs, but to be able to have more of a, affect more change in this world, I need to touch
A
more
bigger
people.
platform,
Um,
as it were. A bigger platform.
well,
A bigger
yes,
platform.
yes, yeah. Yep. So I do want to branch into doing that. I do think, I don't know if this is necessarily where I will go in the future, but I have thought about finding a way to have vets have, maybe one behaviorist or trainer kind of on call or on
Wow,
staff
that's
to
brilliant.
send people to, because it's such a big part of I mean, again, I've worked at vets. I was always the one who had to hold the dogs because I
Hmm.
could, instinctively knew how to help the dog calm down and hold them, but not feel like I'm holding them so that they could relax while things were happening. And I would say, oh, they're over it. They need a break.
Hmm.
There's someone that knows those things to train the vet techs who do most of the holding of
Yeah.
dogs, or anyone that would touch a dog. Again, groomers. I mean, even though I don't have the grooming skills, I would know how to
Hmm.
handle a dog better because I would be reading them constantly and I would be okay taking breaks when they're specifically needed.
Yeah.
And I would work everything around the
Dog
dog's
centric. It's
emotions.
it's much more dog centric. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, long term, it'd be great if I could even just start facilities that kind of had multiple different things where I was training trainers to know behavior and then also having them get connected with within different industries to kind of be the go-to to help other people learn.
Yeah.
So kind of teaching people to teach
Yeah. Oh,
people.
I
um,
think that's a brilliant idea. I hope,
yeah,
I think dogs would be better off for it. I think it's a brilliant idea to combine
yeah,
resources in one place for people. Like if it's a beautiful
yeah,
boarding facility or doggy daycare or whatever, and they have like, and they're doing things right. Okay. But to have that
yeah.
added part of like, hey, if you're having specific issues, here's our on call
Oh,
person,
yes,
or here's the seminar you can go to, or here's, or the big,
yes,
the
yep.
shelters, like you say, or, it's probably difficult to monetize. So I hope for the best for you,
I
but,
know. That's always the thing with training, isn't
yeah.
it? It's always like, okay, how can I do what I love, but also, make a
Yeah,
living at
and then
it?
it's only fair. I mean, I get that. Our podcast is not monetized; it's a labor of love because I just want to get this message out. But if
Yep.
somebody came along and said,
Yeah.
"Hey, we'd like to create something bigger out of this," I'd be like, "Sure, that a bigger
Right?
platform so we
Yeah.
can get the message out, and then make a little living.
Yes.
Awesome." But so I get it. I get it what you're saying. But I
Yeah.
know that your
Yeah.
heart's certainly in the right place for the dogs, and helping the people will
Yeah.
help the dogs. So That's pretty great.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. Well, we're to the part of the show where I sent some questions to you, um, and they're questions that we borrowed from a book called Tim Ferriss's. Oh gosh, it's by Tim Ferriss, and now I'm blanking out on the name of the book because I haven't said it out loud. So, Tribe of Mentors. Thank you. Anyway, I wanted to
Oh,
give credit because we totally, borrowed this idea, this Tribe of Mentors
yeah.
questions, and it's also what we call. Let's see if I can hold this up. Snack break. These are some
Oh,
uh, cornmeal
nice.
cherry scones. That's what they are. Yeah, yeah.
Scones.
Because I got to
Yeah.
feed my crew and we're done because it's food's part of. We're also food motivated, just like the dogs.
Yeah,
So
exactly
it's the
right.
question
You need
time.
it to live.
Okay.
Oh.
So what is the worst advice given in your profession or bad idea that you hear of in your field of expertise?
Mm. Um, I mean, I guess an all-encompassing one is quick results. I mean, to try and get everything done as quick as possible because 9 times out of 10, and maybe even 10 times out of 10, if you're just going for quick results to get things taken care of, you're gonna probably go for harsher methods because you're not actually taking time to learn about the animal
Right.
and figure out a way to help them that's going to not just be good for you, but for them, which is should be the goal. So yeah, the quick fixes are that's not the goal. The goal should be, quality
Hmm.
of the information that you're getting and how to learn about helping your dog in a way that's empathetic, I guess
I
is the
love
right
it.
word for it, to
Yep.
make sure
Hmm.
that, yep.
Okay. Okay. What inspires and motivates you to do what you do? And what is your true purpose in the world?
Mm. Yeah, honestly, I can remember thinking this from being just a little girl. I always felt like I had to be a voice for animals because they don't have a voice in the way that we think of it, like speaking, right? They can't stand up for themselves in the
Hmm.
way that we're used to even seeing from people. And I always wanted to be like a voice for the
That's great.
animals. So kind of speaking through them, going, okay, this is what your dog is feeling. How can we help them with the feeling? So it's not just it's being a voice for them, but also in the way that I'm helping people understand that voice too, if that makes sense. So connecting them to people more with them and their voices.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. What quality do you admire most in people?
Mm. I definitely empathy and it is and passion. I've always compassion and empathy are words that have ruled my whole life because they're very easy not to have. I feel
Mm.
like it's more of like I really am happily surprised when I see people I connect well with because they have the same type of empathy. I feel
Hmm.
like empathy rules my world. I feel like if I got one, you know, personality trait, it's empathy. Like that, that is who I am. So I feel like having other people that I find ever that
Hmm.
have it, I always will connect with them, whether they're empathetic about, like, passionate about certain
Hmm.
other, things. It's the empathy where you can put yourself in others' shoes when you care about the well-being of others, even if it doesn't affect you. That is something that I really cherish and think is super important for
I
everybody.
wish there was more. I have to agree.
I do. I know. Yep.
Okay. What have you become better at saying no to?
Um, Lots of things. One, it's just kind of in general standing up for my
Hmm.
energy. I guess, and when I say that, I mean I don't let myself burn out as much as I used to because I could be working constantly. I used to work a lot. I used to do like 20 classes a week,
Mm.
and then I'd do stuff on top of
Hmm.
that. And while it's good, I always, would burn out in the end anyway. So it's like, well, I can't help people if I'm burned
Right,
out.
right.
So I have to learn to say no to certain things that are going to take too much energy, which is why I landed in this part of the field because I was getting burned out in veterinary care. I was getting burned out, grooming burned out really
Hmm.
fast. And even in boarding and daycare, it's just a lot of physical. And I would see all these animals and their emotions and not be able to do something about it. So protecting my energy and my
Uh-huh.
emotional well-being has been a huge thing. So that might mean saying no to, having too much of my time taken up. It might mean saying no to, physically interacting with people for a
Hmm.
day because I sometimes just need to I have like an autoimmune disease and other things going on with myself that I just need to listen
Mhm.
to more than I used to. So luckily, the right people understand. So if I need to say no to something, I have a
Oh,
good,
yeah, yeah.
support system now that understands. And a lot of my clients, the good ones, understand
Oh,
everything
yeah.
too. I mean, when they're on the same level as you, if you can't understand that I'm human and sometimes need to say no, then we might not be able to, work together well anyway. So I need to be okay with people maybe not understanding me, but I just need to listen to
Okay,
myself and protect my energy.
okay, alright. The other question was, if
Uh,
you could send a message to the world, what would it be?
mm, um, I feel like I need to be super poetic here, but in
Mhm.
general, the idea is I want people to understand that what they do and how they act affects others, including animals and dogs. So thinking about what you're doing before you're doing it and understanding that what you're doing is going to affect something else or someone else. So, like, you have ripple
Yes.
effects. Like, one negative thing can affect someone's whole
Mhm.
day, and then they might be a little bit more, grumpy towards someone else. And it just kind of, negativity can spread. And it goes with animals, like I said, too, where, I just like to pause and have people just think about, okay, well, what I'm doing isn't just going into the void. Others around me are being affected.
Absolutely.
So it's just self-awareness.
There you go.
Self-awareness
Yep.
is
Mhm.
huge, and it really does help with being empathetic. It's like you kind of need to actively work on
Yeah.
that to be able to understand. And again, it goes with dogs too. If you're understanding how what you're doing affects them, it makes a
Oh, for
difference.
sure,
So
for sure.
yeah.
No, that's it's a good message. All right. So then how do we get it if somebody wants to learn more about what you're doing, how do we find you? I mean, we'll have these links, but let's have you share everything you'd like to about all that.
Sure. Yeah. I have a website. It's
Mhm.
www.ccpsmn.com. And it has kind of a long bio on myself, and it has all my services on there, my blog, which I need to post more on there. So look forward to that coming soon. I'm getting there. And then I also now on there, you will see have virtual classes
Oh,
I've
I was
started
gonna
because
ask you
that
about
way,
that because,
yeah,
that, hopefully
yeah.
then the more people that can see this can, work with you virtually, which would be great. So,
Yeah, because I want to be able to help people that aren't just in my radius
mhm,
physically. I mean, I would like to help people around the world if possible. So virtual learning is obviously more common
mhm,
now than when we had certain things in the world happen. So I want to be able to connect with as many people as possible and answer as many questions, or, help people with their specific dogs, whatever it might be. Even just having like lectures there where it's like if you all you care about is one
mhm.
topic, there's an hour, that you can go on and learn about that. Um, that's something that's somewhat new, but I'm hoping it picks up a little bit and takes off because, like you said, that's just connecting to more people.
Right.
Like I just want to be able to do that. And a lot of people, if they're sitting at home, just pop on. It's like a podcast. You can just pop on and watch
Mhm.
something or
Oh,
listen to something for a little bit of
I'm,
time.
have several subscriptions to horse trainers because they're putting out
Yeah,
information that is where I'm learning over and over again, how to be better with my horses.
yeah,
And yeah, it's so inexpensive.
yes,
I mean, when you have a model that you
I
subscribe,
know.
it's like, so
Yeah,
inexpensive for tons of information that's so useful. And then you can usually find a
yep,
community of like-minded people who are following the same thing. And then you can talk about it more and,
yes.
uh,
Yes, that was what I was thinking of doing too. Like I'm in the works of having like a Patreon, which will have a community on
mhm,
there, and I'm gonna have like PDFs that you'll have access to and things like that, and videos and topics you can do, question and answers, or
oh,
people
yeah. No,
can,
it's
select a poll.
limitless,
Like,
and, I think that the
yeah,
need is out there, and, because I live, like, what, 70 miles from a city center, a big major city from, like
mm,
I'm out in the
yeah,
country, and to a dog training school to physically take my dog would be 30, 40 miles one way,
yeah.
um, so
And that might not even be what you need. You might need one-on-one
right,
help.
exactly. So being able
Yeah.
to, learn things remotely is also a great way besides, the in-person stuff. I'm glad that you're in the world for our dogs and for helping the people with
Thank
their
you.
dogs. and we
You too.
really
Yes.
appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming on our podcast today. And like I said, everyone, she'll have we'll have all of her information, Kara's information on the website, and I bet there's a book in there somewhere. You probably got a book, you're going to be working on, and yeah,
It's in the
yeah,
works.
just as
Yeah.
well.
Using that writing
There you
degree.
go. There you go. So thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.